happens.
Yeah. Quick skinner. My name is Alexandre Nequado, and I'm with my colleague André Dudemaine. For this week, we have Seth Cardinal Dodginghorse. So Seth, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Seth Cardinal Dodginghorse. I was raised and still live on the Tsuut'ina Reserve in Treaty 7, which is in Alberta. And the reserve is pretty much adjacent to the city of Calgary. And on my father's side, I am Amskapi Pikanii, which is Blackfeet, which is on the US side of the Blackfeet territory. And I am an artist and musician.
Welcome to Adadigan Street. The name of the podcast is Adadigan Street because we had finally one an indigenous name on a street in Montreal. It has been a long process, but finally it is there. And it means brother and sister. This is the same word in the Mohawk language, Adadigan. So you are, of course, very welcome. And well, there is many ways we can start this interview because you are a multidisciplinary artist connected to many form and performance, and you are an habitué in Montreal. You have been here in the very same building where I am, in the Clark Gallery, in the Phi Center, and now you have a show coming at the Mai Interculturel that will start in 3 days.
Tomorrow is actually the opening.
Oh, tomorrow is the opening.
Yes.
So, wow, okay. So can you speak about the upcoming show?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me on this and reaching out. I'm excited to talk. So the show is a collaboration with me and my mother, Glenna Cardinal. She's actually at the gallery right now, doing some final touches, so it'll be all ready for tomorrow. But the name of our show is Agency, and we have a collective with me and my mom that we started, and it's me and her right now. And the name of it is tīná gúyáńí, which in our Tsuut'ina language means deer road. And we started this first collaborating with each other, I'd say in 2019 2019. We started making art together. And before we started collaborating, I was doing art as I guess I've been an artist my whole life, but I was beginning to do like exhibitions and travel for work, I guess, in contemporary art galleries. And my mom she is an artist and creative and always has been, but she had never created, I guess, work with the intent to show it in a gallery or show it to the public. And in 2019, she reached out to me. We were having dinner, or we caught up with each other. And I make it sound like we don't live very close, but we live right next to each other on the reserve. And I went over and saw her at her house and visited. And she, in 2019, said, "Seth, I want to make art, and I have all these thoughts and feelings, and I want to express them." And she asked if I could help her. And it was, I immediately said yes. And I had never really collaborated in an art context with anyone before. I mostly did it on my own. Whereas with music, I've played in bands, or I've played in other people's bands and have collaborated. But when it came to art, I hadn't really collaborated with anyone before. And it just made sense to do it with my mom because we had the same sort of lived experiences, and we wanted to communicate the same feelings around experiences we've had. And so this show is, I think there are five or six works in the show, and one of them is a piece that I made by myself, but the rest of them are works that we made together, either in residencies we've done together where we've had studio space to work, or just works that we've made at home on the res. And this show, we named it Agency because we have a text piece that's on the wall, and it kind of, my mom wrote and had this idea to kind of write almost like a sort of poem, just like some thoughts around the ideas of the word agency. And I would say maybe 5 or 4 years ago, she came up with this idea, and I helped edit it and kind of put it together visually and figure out what to do with it. And it was just called Agency, and it was her talking about her thoughts and ideas around what agency means as an Indigenous person, and what it means to have your agency taken away, to have and just to imagine what agency means moving into the future, taking your own agency back. And that kind of, I guess, when we were putting this show together and thinking about titles and stuff, it just made sense to call it Agency, because I would say the work in there has to do with us reclaiming our sense of agency and voice, and also using that to create art as a way of healing and kind of understanding things we've been through and communicating it to people who either have no idea about either the politics of the area we come from, or even just the sort of things that happen to Indigenous people everywhere under colonialism. But that's a bit about the show.
Yes, and agency is interesting because we know that the first colonial authority in our communities were the Indian agent by the federal. But also agency is the way you organize things, and this is what you do when you organize an art show. So there is this several layers of signification that are really interesting. And this agency is also about the land. We see it very obviously here with one of the exhibit.
Yeah, the idea of the Indian agent, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's you know, I think pretty much at least most of the reserves that I've been to, we have the areas that we call Old Agency on the reserve, and that's where the Indian agent lived, and where sometimes the residential schools or the farms and things like that were. And so, yeah, we were playing on that idea of just like what agency means, even just like in the context of the Indian agent.
Yeah, and I know in Newfoundland, in Labrador, there was the reserve, one Inuit reserve, what called the place of the bus. I don't remember exactly the name. Maybe you can help me, Alexandre. Uchimaït, the place where the bus is, was the name of the reserve. And of course, Uchima was not the, in that expression was not the Aboriginal captain, but our leader. It was the Indian agent that was running the reserve in the name of the crown. That was the Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is particular also, you have, I think, a training as in arts at the university, so in contemporary arts, but you stay really close to the tradition. You are also a traditional dancer. So, how do you easily connect the both side of arts, or is it somehow something you have to work out to blend those two inspirations or two ways to express your what you want to say to the people?
That's a good question. I really put a lot of thought. Like I think with art that I find, at least like with me and the way I make it, it's a bit of a balance between kind of what following my gut. So maybe just that spark to make something and following that, and kind of as I follow that, then as I'm coming up with ideas or maybe making something, I then reach a point where I start to be I guess critical or just conscious of I think I start maybe analyzing what I'm doing and start thinking like I think, for example, like I have a piece, a performance that does incorporate like inspiration from traditional dancing, because I grew up powwow dancing and traveling like all summer to go dance at powwows with my family, and that really had like a huge I guess even like an impact in preparing for me to be an artist, because being in my experience being an artist is a lot like because when you're on the powwow trail, it's kind of like going on tour. You just like get in a car, drive to you know, a different reserve, dance all weekend, and then you drive to a different one. Could be in a different province in Canada or a different state, and you just keep going and going. And um, that really, I guess, prepared me to be a artist, because I now do a lot of traveling and I'm in different places for a bit. And I, when it comes to cultural things, I really do put a lot of thought behind it, in terms of if I am doing something that involves inspiration from my cultural dancing or cultural teachings, I try to spend time with like my family or elders in my community and make sure that I'm doing it in a way that is maybe like respectful, or not being uh, what's the word, but kind of like exploiting my own culture, or taking advantage of my teachings, and maybe using knowledge that is meant for our community and using it in a way that sharing it in spaces it's not meant to be shared. So I always try and think about those things and have conversations with my family and people to make sure that I don't overstep those boundaries, or I don't start doing things in a way that doesn't because with a lot of our traditional teachings, a lot of the reasons they survived or were passed on was because they were I guess kept secret in a way and kept safe. And I think that's like an important thing to do, and there's kind of ways to bring my knowledge of my culture and teachings into, I guess, my contemporary art, which might be seen by anybody, in a way that doesn't just kind of, I guess, sell my own teachings to people. And I, I think maybe I even learned or taught myself that, or learned that when I was in art school, because when I was in art school, the majority of my peers were non-Indigenous, and I had a lot of most of my teachers were mostly of like white or settler background, and they also had expectations of what me as an Indigenous person should make as art. And so I think I really learned to play with people's expectations and kind of not mold myself to follow what they think. And even like I studied at the Alberta University of the Arts for 5 years, and I was thinking about that and reflecting of my time there. And with the art that I do, like teachers there couldn't teach me to be an artist or to make art that I do. And I think a lot of my experiences was with teachers was me making something and them not understanding what I was doing, and them maybe trying to change what I was doing, or their suggestions were just didn't make sense to me. And so I would continue to make what I made and do what I did, even if they didn't understand it. And I think a lot of my experience of being in an art school wasn't necessarily having teachers that guided me in the way of, I guess, teaching me how to be an artist, but maybe it taught me a lot about conflict and a lot about, I guess, knowing who I am and not losing that. And so, yeah, because even before I went to art school, I was still doing what I already do. I was already making art and music and doing things. And I think the thing I really value about being in art school was, I guess, being able to have my own studio for the first time. We had student studios in the school, and I was just able to have a space to sit and think and, I guess, really teach myself by making something and then learning from that what didn't work or did work, and then just continuing to do that. And I think, yeah, even if I didn't go to art school, I would still be doing what I'm doing now.
It's interesting. We can almost say that your formation is on teaching yourself what they were teaching to you.
Yeah, I guess so.
So this would be part also of the anti-colonial drive you have and speech you have in your work. You really confront the colonial reality of Indigenous people in Canada, and do you think arts can be a good way to express our vision to the Canadian settler society, and to make advancements for our own fights as Indigenous people of the land?
I think art can be. I think it's a lot of like at least in my experience, there's like so many layers that you kind of have to filter through. And like I guess I've worked really hard for the past, I think maybe 8 years ago I did my first show, and since then I've been kind of doing a lot of different art exhibitions and performances in different settings, in some bigger galleries, some smaller ones. And so sometimes like I guess I've been able to see the different experiences with different institutions, like bigger ones, smaller ones, and things like that. And I think at times I've run into maybe the issue of, or at least I think that an issue that can happen with if you're trying to make political art and you want to share your message, and sometimes you have that work, and that work is it's kind of confined to the gallery space, and the only people who are going to see that message, if it's in that gallery space, is maybe only the people who go to that gallery. And sometimes people that do go to galleries often share, at least in some situations, share similar values. So maybe to me, it can sometimes be like a echo chamber where it's kind of, you have a group of people who all feel the same way about colonialism, maybe understanding that colonialism is bad or these types of things. So then you have all of those people who believe those things in that space, but then the people outside of that space are the people you want to reach and connect with. And then if they don't go to that space, they're not going to see or listen. But I think that shouldn't be, I guess, discouraging, or shouldn't be. I think it's good to just be aware of those things and to kind of understand the limitations of certain gallery spaces or art spaces, and knowing that those things can happen. But I find that also through art, things change everywhere, because I could go and do something in a different place in Canada or the US, and it's completely different people there. And so I think it's there's so many different dynamics. But in my experience, because a lot of the work that I do is very political, people people can either like, maybe an example I can give is because a lot of my work is about the land that I come from in on my reserve, and that land was destroyed for the construction of a highway. And so that created an effect within the community where people became too scared to say anything about what happened to the land and what happened to my family and me. And I've had to kind of become through using my voice, a person who is an activist, and a person who kind of had to be like, everyone's ignoring this, but doesn't anyone else think this is wrong? And just kind of ask those questions. And kind of through asking those questions, people either ignore them or they engage with them in a way where they can be negative, it can be positive, but it's kind of like people either will engage or they'll just walk away. And I think with my art, I've really experienced those types of things. And I think with art could be anything, and art can exist outside of a gallery. If you do performance, you can do a performance anytime, anywhere. Performance and art could be protest. And sometimes the best way to reach people is to bring the art to those places, even if it's not invited. And art has no rules in that way. And just like with our voice, you can use it and you can speak and shout anytime, anywhere, whether it's good or bad, but there's that freedom to that. And I think there's that freedom with that to be able to use your art or use your voice to bring awareness to things that are important to you. And I think art can definitely, maybe the last thing I can say about that is a really nice thing that I've heard is sometimes like I think one time I was at a powwow and I was dancing, and sometimes like my powwow friends and other people don't really know about art or go to galleries or things, but I remember some other little dancer who was tiny and he was a child kind of came up to me and he recognized me and he was like, "Oh, like I love your music and art that you do." And I think that meant a lot to me because I grew up and still live on the reserve, and just to see another res kid have, I guess, be able to maybe resonate with my feelings having grown up and lived on the res and gone through experiences, to me, that I guess is a sign that things can be somehow. I think if you do things, somehow it'll always connect with another person, even if you don't think it does.
Speaking of being uninvited, you did something very bold at the official opening of the road. It was, in a sense, very activist, but also, in a sense, also it could be seen as an artistic performance. Can you? Well, for the benefit of those who are listening to us, can you tell us the story?
Sure. So with that, it all just happened in a way. It kind of you can only plan so much for something like that, and I knew with the opening of this road that um like my family, we had been protesting this road for a long time, and even after we were displaced, we still really tried to uh like bring awareness to what had happened. And that was a big drive behind my art, was to find a way to just share my feelings. And we knew that this road they were building over our land had to be finished at some point. And in my head, I thought, okay, well, when they have their opening, I want to be there and I want to say something. And um, like I couldn't really like plan and think like I think it was very overwhelming with something like that to think, this road might be done in 4 years and there might be this event happening and I want to be there and I want to say something important. What will I say? But it was overwhelming to think and write. I couldn't write down what I wanted to say and work on it for 4 years because it's I think having lived through our experience, it's too much for the brain to handle. And um, I think in the community, we knew that the road would be opening sometime in 2021, and it hadn't been communicated clearly to our nation community. And when it was opening, it was kind of almost a secret. And then my friend, who is a journalist, messaged me at like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. the night before it opened and said, hey, the Southwest Calgary Ring Road is opening tomorrow at like 9 a.m. And it was almost everyone just found out the night before. And so it was kind of kept a secret up until that point. And it really caught me off guard because I was like, oh my gosh, tomorrow all of these people are going to be celebrating this road being complete and people are going to be driving. And uh, it's kind of, it's a lot to process all of that and think, well, what am I going to do about it? And I just, I think I only got maybe an hour or a half hour of sleep that night, but I just spent a lot of time at my home and walking around the land on the reserve and just like praying and thinking a lot. Like I just remember like praying and thinking, tomorrow I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna say something, and I want my words and my thoughts to be clear as possible, and for them to flow out of my mouth easy. Like I don't want to struggle to speak. And that next day I went and showed up where the opening was happening, and in my head, I kind of imagined there would be the chief of our nation who sold the land, and some of the leaders from the community, and maybe the mayor of Calgary at the time, and a couple city officials. Like I didn't really have to imagine what I would be walking into. And so I was really surprised when I showed up, and there was more people than I imagined. I guess it was all of the investors. They had the federal and provincial and municipal officials involved in the project because it was a huge project. And I showed up and kind of realized that everyone that my family and myself had been trying to talk to all these years who ignored us, because my mom had even written letters to different officials involved in the project saying, hey, we were displaced. We need you to know this. Is there something you can do to help us or stop? And everyone ignored us. And then all of a sudden, all of these people we'd been trying to talk to were all there. And I guess I was just there in the moment, and kind of just stood there. And the moment I saw an opportunity to walk up to the podium, I walked up and started speaking. And I didn't really overthink too much, because I think I would have overthought it and been like, are they gonna, if I started worrying about things like, oh, if they're gonna cut the microphone, I didn't really think about that. I just thought I'll walk and I'll speak, and even if it's just the people who are there hear what I'm saying, it'll come out. And actually, most of what I said in that speech was words that my mom wrote, because she also couldn't sleep that night. She was struggling, and she wrote a letter, and she was going to send it to the nation and the different news outlets to bring awareness again, because we had been trying to. And my mom handed me the letter. I walked over and I said, Mom, I'm going to go to this opening of the road, and I'm going to say something, and maybe you might get some phone calls later about, I don't know what's going to happen, but just be prepared. And she handed me the letter. She printed it with our printer and said, can you read this? Can you say this? And so when I showed up, I read that and said it, and it, I just went and I did it, and then I left, and I went home and I took a nap because I was exhausted. And then when I woke up, I turned my phone on, and I had all of these emails and phone calls and messages from people. And what I hadn't realized was that it was live on the news, and it was streamed online live. And I think there was like a Twitter video or something that had over 1 million views or something. So it ended up going viral. And to me, I was like, I'm just going to go speak to the people in the room there. And then when I had left and I realized that, oh, it like had reached all of these other outlets, yeah, really also caught me off guard. But when I showed up there, the night before, I guess when I was praying and walking around, I was just really thinking like, what am I going to do, or what's going to happen? And then in our culture, when we're going through a time of mourning or grief, when you lose something or someone important to you, you cut your hair. And like I've done that before when someone has passed away in our family. And I ended up I was going to cut my hair that night, and I then was like, okay, maybe now like is not the time. And then when I showed up at the opening, I was still had all of my stuff that I had with me when I was walking around and praying the night before. And then when I was there protesting at the podium, I realized that I had my scissors with me still. And in that moment, I just cut my hair. And that also wasn't something that I planned. Like I wasn't, even I wasn't even thinking, oh, I'm going to show up and I'm going to cut my hair in front of everyone. But it just ended up happening because I had my bag with my medicines and different things, and the scissors were there. And then I just thought, I'm going to do this now. And it's just has to do with grief and loss. And people in my community will know that what my family has been through, and kind of offering my hair to the land like that. Yeah.
Yes, and you made history because now it is recorded everywhere that at the opening of this road, there was a protest by a young Aboriginal artist that cut his hair in front of all those so-called beautiful peoples, all those big shots, and wow, it was, and this traumatic experience of having your home destroyed and to have been displaced for to let the road pass is now part of your speech, of your performances, and is it? How do you feel about it? Is it healing? Is it telling a story for the people to know about it? Is it to make comparison with many other lost other indigenous communities that suffered in the same way? Can you explain us what is the sense of carrying on in your art this particular and well, I understand traumatic event for you and your family?
I'd say it's probably all of all of those things, and it I guess like after doing that protest, I guess maybe a nice benefit from it was I guess leading up to that protest, I was feeling very exhausted and drained because I was making my art and sharing my story, and it was kind of like sharing it over and over and over again, just like being like, please, I need someone to hear, and maybe just like trying to find community or something. And because I think a big problem or a big part of what happened with us was it made my family feel very isolated and feel very alone, which is what colonialism does to Indigenous people, is to make them feel separated even from their own community. And I remember even then, I think I was 26 when I did the protest. And even then at 26, I was feeling very exhausted, and I was thinking, oh, like I'm kind of feeling very drained, like emotionally and spiritually. Like I think I need to quit doing art and stop making things, and I don't even know what I want to do if I do that, because I've never, it's been my whole life, I've always been creative, and now this kind of experience has really affected even my art making and even my creativity, where it feels draining. And a nice thing was that after I did that protest, it kind of rejuvenated things, in a way where I kind of felt like, okay, now in a way I don't need to share my story all the time in that way because, you know, for better or worse, someone can look up my name online and that is there. And now they get a sense of who I am or where I come from or what, I guess, what I am about. And I guess that has made it easier in a way because I don't have to keep resharing it in that way. But I guess maybe something that is good and bad in a way is that maybe it brought awareness in a way where it's good because now when I've traveled and I've done things, I've had other people, Indigenous people, come up to me and they said, hey, this happened to my parents, or this happened to my grandfather. This exact same thing happened in my community. And I guess what is bad is that it happened to them as well. But what's good is that what I've heard from them is they've said, oh, but I understand what you're saying in your art, or this makes sense to me. And there's empathy there and understanding. And I think it's nice to know that for other people to know that they're not alone in their experiences, and that our experiences aren't just isolated, which is unfortunate. But a thing is that, you know, if we speak about it and talk about it, we know that we're not alone, and we know that maybe we can say things, and if things happen again to our communities or our people, that things can change and that things can get better. I always, despite everything, I always try to remain positive that things will always get better and things will change. But yeah.
So well, in 3 days, March 8th, we will have this and I speak to the audience now. At May Interculturel, they are doing a fantastic work with the artists, many of them Aboriginal, and this is really a place to connect with artists and contemporary work that are of the utmost importance for us, for our society, and for our world. And so March 8th at 4:00 p.m., Dirty Song, a new performance. Can you speak about it?
Yeah. So this performance, I originally developed this or started performing it, and I think for me a process of performance is the work kind of evolves. So maybe you have an idea and you do a performance somewhere and you try it out, and maybe everything goes well that time, and you do it again the same, or it changes. And with this one, I started doing it a year ago, last February, and it was me just, I got asked to make a sound piece. And so using guitar and I kind of made a audio collage that I performed, a sound collage, using guitar and recordings of buffalo. In Montana, my dad, near his reserve, the Blackfeet Reserve, he takes care of buffalo. And I went there and I recorded the buffalo kind of making, they kind of like make grunting sounds. It's like, they kind of have this kind of like a low growl. And I recorded these sounds, and using my guitar and those sounds, I performed it outside. And it was about, I guess, bringing the buffalo back to the land, because in downtown Calgary, we don't have buffalo roaming around anymore. And that was kind of the idea with the performance, was how could I bring the buffalo back? Because right now I can't afford to bring an actual buffalo. If I could afford and it was good for the buffalo, that would be a fun project or something. But that's kind of how I started that, and I called it Dirt Song because I was thinking about just the dirt and the soil and something we're all touching and in connection with, even the buildings, cars, roads, it's all there underneath. And I'll be doing it now, and now it looks a little bit different. I use, in my culture, we have the Prairie Chicken Dance, and that's what I grew up doing and the dance that I do. And I use my Prairie Chicken Dance bells in this performance to make this sound. And but I don't necessarily dance, but with me it's kind of having these bells and thinking about the expectations of a Indigenous person wearing bells, and people sometimes expect them to dance or perform and things like that. And so I kind of play with that a bit. And I also play guitar in it and play some sounds. And maybe the big thing with this, kind of tying back to the Indian agent, is I use audio recordings of the Indian agent from Tsuut'ina in this performance. And when I was doing research, I found audio tapes where he was 90 years old talking about being the Indian agent on my reserve. And he lived from about maybe the 1860s to the 1960s. And so he was there while my people were being treated horribly and having genocide happen to them. And so in these recordings, he talks about that, but in a positive way, because he was the government official who worked for the crown, and he wanted to deal with the Indian problem. So he talks in these recordings in a way where I feel it's safe to say he was possibly evil, not a good person. And so with this performance, it's shifted now where I use the sounds of my bells and guitar and buffalo to kind of erase the Indian agent and to get rid of his voice. And so that's what this performance will be, kind of following those themes. And I guess coming back to that idea of agency and the Indian agent.
There will be a lot of questions I have. Probably we will invite you back, but I know you have now to get prepared, because tomorrow is the opening, and in 2 days the performance with your mother. So, and well, we invite everybody to go and to discover your works. If it's not for the performance or the opening, at least the exhibition is there for a while at the Dudemaine Interculturel. And this would be, I think, for everybody who go there, a strong experience to connect with your people, your work, and the spirit of the land and the spirit of the buffalo. That we hope is coming back. And thank you to be there with your works, and thank you to have been there with us for this podcast. It has been a beautiful moment for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's great being on here and being invited, and you had great questions, and yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess we'll see you next week, André.
Yes, you guess well.
Okay.
Time to say Batashik.
Batashik, ouais.